incredible video showing the damage in the islands already hit, like the British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, which really escaped the major damage there. In South Florida, meantime, thousands are trying to get out of Irma's way however they can, whether it's on a plane or in a car. The rush turning highways across the entire state into parking lots, and more mandatory evacuations have been ordered in Miami-Dade, and other counties around Florida are beginning to follow suit. Thanks so much for joining us for this hour-long edition of the CBS 4 News at 7.
Hurricane Irma is still taking aim squarely at South Florida.
Let's go right to CBS 4 Chief Meteorologist Craig Setzer for the latest on the storm. Craig.
Yeah, the latest advisory was the 5 o'clock advisory this afternoon, where we had a 175-mile-an-hour hurricane, Category 5, moving to the west-northwest at 16. Really no changes in that. As we go through the coming days here, we're going to be watching that longitude number there. The longitude shows us how far west the storm is. The latitude shows us how far north of the storm is. This number is going to be going up faster than this number, but eventually this number will be going up faster than that number. That's that west to north turn. We are at, in South Florida, between 25 and 26 north and about 80 to 81 west. I was thinking earlier that maybe we could keep it west of 80, which would be maybe near our coast or just a little bit east of there, like a number of 78 would be nice, but unfortunately, the new models that are coming in are also following a trend a little bit to the west, and so that's kind of reinforcing the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone that they issued earlier. Here's the position right now, 40 miles south of Grand Turk Island. Now there's the storm, and you can see it is big, and the wind field continues to grow. The hurricane force winds, excuse me, extend out 140 miles from the center, and that is more than the width of the Florida Peninsula. So if it goes up right in the middle of the Florida Peninsula, there's going to be storm surge flooding on both coasts. Now, as the storm goes up the peninsula, let me get to the peninsula, show you here in the track, so I've got a graphic to reference. Here's the Saturday afternoon time frame, and then here is the Sunday afternoon time frame there. So there is the cone, but the cone doesn't say anything about the weather. The storm is much, much bigger than the cone there, and as it goes up the peninsula, the hurricane force winds will gradually decrease and shrink that area of the core. But because it's going to be so strong when it reaches South Florida, remember, Category 4 is 130 miles an hour to 155 miles an hour. That's the sustained wind, which means it's just blowing that hard. And then it's gusting on top of that. So structures and any weak buildings are certainly in peril. The buildings that, of course, that's why we put the shutters up to protect the buildings to keep the wind from coming in. All right, let's check out the models, because this is what I've been watching, checking on through the evening, and here they are. And once again, they're now in pretty good agreement here. So we have fairly high confidence that it's going to follow this track. South of Andros there, just north of the Cuban coast there, and this is the Saturday 2 p.m. time frame there. So the center of the storm is going to be probably somewhere in one of the tips of those models. That is the Sunday midnight position there. So the models are speeding up a little bit. That is Sunday at Saturday. Hang on a second, let me get my bearing here. Okay, so the models are speeding up a little bit. So these new models are coming in as we're speaking here, so the models are speeding up a little bit. The models now, and we're doing this on air, so we get new models that update in the computer program. That is Sunday at 3 a.m. So the storm could be speeding up, and we're going to be speaking with Ed Rappaport in just a second, and when we do, we're going to ask him about this. Is there a concern that the storm is now coming faster and that we may lose our weather window, any kind of weather window, Saturday morning? Anyway, let's go on with this. There's the new GFS model coming in this evening. It has shifted back to the west. There was the morning European run. This is the evening GFS model. Earlier it was over here. It has now come back to the west, and as we go forward in time here is the Sunday 1 p.m. time frame. Some of the models are a little faster, but basically in this general area. There is an outlier that's a little bit to the west, but it also eventually comes to the north. So basically the bottom line here is that those model rings, which show where the center of the storm is expected to be, is pretty much a bullseye on South Florida, unfortunately, and a bullseye representing a Category 4 hurricane. Here are the latest winds, probabilities for hurricane force winds. This is the chance overall right now based on the current track of hurricane force winds. These values, as we look at them, we consider very, very high. This red area would be the swath of hurricane force winds, and then it thins out here because the overall storm would be weakening as it goes over land here. So the highest winds near the landfall point gradually going down as it goes to the north, but still a very, very powerful landfall event potentially here in South Florida. The Keys, you can see the wind values drop down as you go west in the Keys, but still a storm surge event for the Keys. So here's the timeline we're talking. Tomorrow, the last good weather day. Saturday, the winds and the squalls increase. And by Sunday, that's our hunker down day. That's our day to get in place and ride the storm out and get through the other side on Monday, where the weather will be improving as we go through the day. So let's join let's go over to the National Hurricane Center now and talk to Dr. Ed Rappaport. Ed, as I was on the air, I was looking at some of the new models that are coming in, and they look a little bit faster in bringing the center to South Florida. Are you seeing that?
I just took a look as well. It looks like there's not much of a change, and I mean that in the context of in terms of what we need to prepare for and when. Tomorrow's the last day to get everything ready, and then the weather will deteriorate on Saturday, with the worst of it appears still Saturday night and Sunday. And if we now start thinking about what is it that we're going to experience, if the worst of the weather comes through us here in South Florida, then we're talking about conceivably as much as 10 hours of hurricane force winds and potentially 36 hours of tropical storm force winds. So not only is it going to be potentially severe, but it's going to be a long duration event.
So on the backside, the improvement timeline, then when will we expect the tropical storm force wind radii to clear South Florida going north?
It looks like perhaps by daybreak on Monday morning. Of course, that's still several days away, so it's not right. That's not certain, but we're talking about basically tropical storm force winds from potentially Saturday afternoon through Sunday night.
Right. So, of course, and when the tropical storm force winds arrive, most of the government services shut down. They lock down. How are you guys prepared over there at the National Hurricane Center?
We're doing well. Thank you for asking. I hope everybody else is as well. We're in a facility that was designed in part by Herb Saffer from the Saffer-Simpson scale. That's where we get the categories. And it was designed for Category 5. So we're going to be safe here. If for some reason we are unable to send out a product again, for any particular reason, we have a backup facility in Washington to take over for us.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys be safe over there. You know, we all live down here in South Florida, so we all share the fact that what we forecast is now going to come and impact us.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to have our folks here staying in, and we'll probably have what we have call shelter in place, perhaps for 36 hours, people staying here at the facility. Okay, thanks. Dr. Ed Rappaport at the National Hurricane Center, the acting director over there. So guys, that's pretty much the story.
All right, Craig, thanks a lot. We actually have some breaking news right now. One of our airports, Chopper 4, is live right now over Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport, and the FAA has just issued a ground stoppage for Miami International, Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International, and Orlando International Airports. There are simply too many departures, so they've stopped takeoffs to space out the planes in the air. Now, at Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International, there's a huge backup of planes on the tarmac. You can see that right now from Chopper 4. It is so bad, our chopper pilot heard someone in the tower say over the radio that the pilots are turning their engines off. Now, as soon as we hear that flights have resumed, we, of course, will bring that to you, and we'll stay on top of that information at not only the Fort Lauderdale Airport, but at MIA as well.
It's going to be so frustrating for those people sitting on board those planes, to hear the engines powered off, to know that they're sitting there on the runway, to wanting so desperately to get out of South Florida before the storm comes in, and basically just have to sit there and wait for some news.
Sit and wait, as so many people are in all the airports around South Florida right now. Well, Miami-Dade's mayor may have caught some of you off guard with a new evacuation order today.
That's right. He expanded the order to include all of Zone B, which wasn't a shock, but then he included parts of Zone C.
Mayor Carlos Jimenez estimates that affects well over 500,000 people in Miami-Dade. CBS 4's Jim Barry is live at the Miami-Dade Emergency Operations Center with details for us. Hey, Jim.
Hey guys, how you doing? Actually, Elliot, that number is about 700,000 people, up from 200,000 yesterday. And the message from here is pretty simple. If you live in a potential storm surge area, get out while you can. As you mentioned, the county has dramatically expanded the evacuation order. It already included Zone A, the low-lying areas, which obviously include Miami Beach, the Barrier Islands, Zone B, and now, as you mentioned, parts of Zone C, which essentially are areas east of US 1, Dixie Highway to the south, and Biscayne Boulevard to the north. Now, all of this because of the great concern about catastrophic storm surge, and we've heard Craig Setzer talk about it time and time again. This really could be a very serious and dangerous situation, and so that's why the county is issuing this expanded order. It now applies to 700,000 folks. The county hopes that most people find refuge with family and friends, but if you can't do that, well, county shelters are an option, but the Red Cross says if you show up there, do not come empty-handed.
At least 3 days worth of water and food, 1 gallon per person per pet if you go into a pet shelter, bedding, and some entertainment, some form of entertainment to make sure that they keep themselves comfortable at the shelter. They need to understand that an evacuation shelter will not have the comforts of home. They're going to be sharing an open space with friends and family in a place that doesn't have beds.
And another point about the shelters, you cannot just check in and then leave. It doesn't operate like a hotel. Once you are there, you are expected to stay. Now, another point about the expanded evacuation order, if you're concerned or confused at all about whether or not it applies to you, we've got a link. Go to cbsmiami.com, click on that link, type in your address, and then you will immediately have your answer. Meantime, here at Miami-Dade EOC, you can see this place is a beehive. It looks like they're having a little powwow now. You can see all the municipalities here gathered. This really is the nerve center, as all of these municipalities in Miami-Dade are keeping a close eye on Irma and to coordinate efforts if and when the need arises. Live at Miami-Dade EOC, I'm Jim Barry, CBS 4 News. Back to you.
Jim, thanks a lot. And Jim mentioned something so important. If you have any doubts about whether or not you're in an evacuation zone, go to our website, get that map from miamidade.gov. You just type in your address, and that tells you right there. You may be surprised.
Yeah, you may be surprised. And it's all of zones A and B in Miami-Dade County and parts of zone C right now.
It's a lot of people, 700,000 people. That's in Miami-Dade. In Broward County, evacuations continue as officials there are winding down the preparations.
The airport and seaports are getting ready to close as well.
But what's open now is going at full steam, as is their Emergency Operations Center, and that's where CBS 4's Joan Murray is standing by. So what's the latest from there, Joan?
Well, as you say, they are going full speed, strategizing about how they are going to respond to the storm at this point. 14 shelters opened about 7 hours ago now, and we're told one is already full. It's over capacity. That is the Pompano Beach High School shelter, and they're telling people to go to the Lions Creek School in place of that shelter. So we're told at this point about 1,700 people have now shown up at the shelters in Broward County. Now, a couple of other important announcements, as you mentioned. One is the airport. The Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport is going to close tomorrow night, Friday night, 7:45, they say, the last plane out, and then the airport is going to shut down, and then the airport will be closed Saturday and Sunday. They're also saying don't think you can park your car at the airport. A lot of cars are there, but they're saying that is not a shelter, and also nobody can go in the airport to shelter. It's going to be completely shut down. Another thing being shut down, the bridges. All the bridges in Broward County are going to go into lockdown position at noon on Friday. That means you got to get your boat. If you're planning, you have to go under a bridge. They're not going to be able to go up anymore in lockdown position as of noon on Friday. So hopefully everybody has taken care of their boat at this point in time. The mayor here, Barbara Sharif, saying everyone needs to take the storm very seriously.
I cannot stress to you enough how important it is for you to evacuate if you live east of Federal Highway, or if you live in a low-lying area or in a mobile home. Get out now. Your window of time to evacuate is closing rapidly. Once the storm surge arrives, for your own safety, emergency responders will not be able to get to you.
So what they're saying is once wind speeds reach 35 miles per hour, that it will be the cutoff. If you dial 911, emergency responders will not be able to get to you. Next update here from the EOC tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Reporting live in Plantation, Joan Murray, CBS 4 News.
Thank you, Joan. And while some people are evacuating their coastal homes and heading inland, others are choosing to leave Florida altogether.
We'll show you that dramatic effort. And there's a whole other group of people, thousands of them, who've been brought here to South Florida. They don't live here, and now they can't get out.
And we are gathering the latest images out of the Caribbean as we see what Hurricane Irma has left in its path. This is video from Barbuda, which the Prime Minister says is barely habitable, but there have been deaths reported in the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, and St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands and St. John. We'll have more on that when we come back.
Welcome back. Well, the rush to get out of South Florida is evident everywhere you look. Chopper 4 bringing us this video of planes lined up to take off from Opa-locka Airport. While many of them are likely private jets, it does illustrate just how many people have decided to leave.
Now, many people are evacuating long distance ahead of Hurricane Irma. A problem with a mass evacuation in places like Florida, where north is the only way out, are traffic jams like this one. This is a bird's eye view of the Florida Turnpike today near Leesburg, northwest of Orlando. So if you live in an evacuation zone here in South Florida, this is something you do not want to get stuck in. Officials remind us the best evacuation plan means finding family or friends who live inland. The last place you want to be is stuck in your car in traffic when a hurricane hits.
All right, remember that. Our airports are full as well as people are trying to get on flights to leave South Florida.
Keyword trying. Some of those people include cruise passengers who are now back in the port with no one to get them out of here.
Let's go live right now to CBS 4's Mike Cunio at Miami International Airport, where there's so many people in this dilemma, Mike.
Yeah, there really are. There's been dozens of cancellations throughout the day and hundreds more coming throughout the weekend. I want to show you just over my shoulder behind me here. You can see some of these people trying to get tickets right now. These are actually passengers from the cruise ships coming from the port of Miami. Their vacations cut short today because of the storm. They did say that the cruise lines were very helpful trying to arrange travel, but some of them have flights, others do not. That is a very common occurrence here in the American Airlines concourse. They will start to wind down operations tomorrow afternoon, and then cancel operations Saturday and Sunday here at Miami and Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, and Fort Myers. Now, again, we did speak to a few of these cruise ship passengers who are trying to get out of Irma's way.
They cut the trip short by 2 days, so they gave us the opportunity. We could have either stayed on the boat, and they're going to take the boat back out for 2 more days. The problem is they don't know when and where the boat's going to come back in. Or you had the opportunity to disembark and try to get a flight out, which we got a flight out for tomorrow, but we're just trying to see if we can get, since they added, American added some more flights for tonight, let's see if we can get another flight out tonight.
Now, they are expecting more people from the Port of Miami to come here to this American Airlines terminal right behind me. But all officials here have said the same thing over and over again today. If you do have a flight, call your airlines, double check that it's on time and going to take off. Once again, MIA, though, is not a shelter. I repeat, it's not a shelter. So if you do need somewhere to stay, make sure you check out our website, cbsmiami.com. At Miami International Airport, Mike Cunio, CBS 4 News.
I hope those people get to where they want to be. Mike, thank you for that live report. Let's take a minute now for an Irma reality check, if you will. The single overriding message that needs to get across to all of South Florida is that we all need to take this storm very seriously.
You've been hearing that from local and state officials. You've been hearing about that from all of us here at CBS 4 as well.
Now, this is a very fluid situation as we prepare ahead of the storm's arrival. Things are changing as far as the important information, though, that you need to know. For example, evacuation zones. Miami-Dade officials today expanding those zones from A and B in the red and orange to include now portions of Zone C.
And that is because of concerns over storm surge. To find out if you live in this expanded evacuation zone in Miami-Dade, you can go to cbsmiami.com.
All you have to do is type in your address, and in Broward County, the same story. The evacuation zones for Irma are A and B. That's basically anyone who lives east of Federal Highway. And Craig, you know, this situation with the storm surge is something, guys, we haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
Now, we had a small storm surge with Andrew in 1992 in Biscayne Bay near Matheson Hammock and that area, and the famous pictures of the big boats that were in the mangroves.
But nothing of this magnitude.
But nothing of this magnitude, nothing of this size, and the amount of water that's pushing. And the thing we have to remember with the storm surges, it's current coming in from the ocean, and there is all real possibility that some of the barrier islands could be overwashed. In other words, Atlantic Ocean coming into Biscayne Bay.
Wow. So for those of us who watched all of the flooding in Houston last week and in Texas, that's very different from what could happen if we get the storm surge that is being forecast.
Right, because current has a tremendous amount of force with it, and so even a foot of water moving quickly can damage buildings, move buildings, cars, and you just don't want to be in that. That's why we're trying to get the people away from the coast. But our building code is one of the highest here in the country, and so if you are in a shuttered, where you can keep the wind out, building, you should stay here. Unless you're in a mobile home, you've got to get out. Let's show you what's going on right now. Here is the latest advisory, and that is the position here. I just kind of wanted to start it here. This is Sunday at 2 p.m. where the center is forecast to be. Now, the computer models that are coming in, some look a little bit faster, and as we were talking earlier to the director of the National Hurricane Center, because some of them are moving faster, he said everybody should continue to prepare tomorrow. The speed at this point is not going to make that much of a difference, except for the fact that we may be in the storm in the early morning hours on Sunday, the worst of the storm. Going through a hurricane at night is just a horrible situation. And this is a bad situation already. So, you know, I'd hate to see it get worse by having the storm speed up and us having to go through this at night. It just seems a little bit more bearable during the day, although this is going to be a fairly incredible event in terms of how bad it's going to be. That's the Sunday 2 p.m. position. Now, then beyond that, we're looking at the hurricane force wind probabilities continuing to come up. This high risk area is just now coming right into South Florida. You can almost make out the storm's swath, the width of the hurricane force winds just sweeping up through that red area and heading on to the north there. You can see in the Keys, the lower Keys, despite the fact that the threat for hurricane force winds is relatively lower, this storm is also pushing a tremendous amount of storm surge with it. So there is an expectation of storm surge flooding through the Keys, up the east coast of Florida, up the west coast of Florida because the wind field is so wide. So really there is no coastal location that is exempt from some type of storm surge flooding. With more on exactly what it is and how bad it could be in some parts, here's meteorologist Liz Horton.
Well, storm surge can be deadly, very dangerous, Craig, as you've been describing. It's literally when the strong winds push the ocean water onshore, and it literally can come on in feet. Within a matter of 15 or 20 minutes, you can see the water level rise by feet. It is not only measured by 1 or 2 feet, it can be very high. In fact, the National Hurricane Center is saying that some areas could see 5 to 10 feet of storm surge with this system. Let's go into a little bit more detail detail. So not only can it rise several feet in a few minutes, 1 cubic yard actually weighs nearly 1 ton, which means it only takes 1 to 2 feet of ocean water to carry a vehicle away. So if you park your car on the street and the storm surge comes in, it very well may not be there at the end of the storm. We want to take you through the storm surge watch so we can show you who is impacted. It's for most of our area, especially Miami-Dade County. That's where the greatest concern is. These will likely shift to warnings either later tonight or in the morning. As we zoom on in here to Broward County, you can see along the coast we have an elevated risk pretty much throughout just those coastal regions east of US 1. It is elevated. Now, the path of the storm can change, and that can affect your probability of how high your storm surge would be. But right now, we're looking for elevated risk in Broward County, moderate risk for most of northern Miami-Dade County. So that's from that county line all the way down towards Miami, the Miami River, as it goes out west towards Miami Airport. A big consideration, a big concern. Also Miami Beach, South Beach, Bal Harbor, all those areas in a moderate risk. As we head down to the south, this is the area where we have the most likelihood of seeing extreme problems due to storm surge. Cutler Bay, Palmetto Bay, Princeton, Gables by the Sea. If you're in any of these spots, Coral Bay, you are in the threat of seeing major storm surge, 5 to 10 feet. The Keys will likely be dealing with this as well, at least moderate to high for most of the upper Keys. As you head to the middle Keys, we'll be likely looking at the same. For those of you that live closer to the northern side of the island, it will be slightly worse than the southern tip. And then Key West even looking at a moderate risk in most areas. So this is something that you need to be very aware of. You need to make sure you evacuate in time. Do not get stuck with rising water. Remember, it just takes a little bit to carry a person away. Cars and buildings doesn't take much either. We'll likely see catastrophic damage with the storm surge as it comes in. Back to you.
Not too late to head to a shelter as a chance, someplace to go of last resort. There's the list of shelters in Miami-Dade right here on the screen. So we're going to leave it up there for a moment so you can take a look and write down any information you might need.
Yeah, I want to let people know also that we're awaiting a news conference from officials in Monroe County, the mayor of Key West and other officials asking people to evacuate the Florida Keys. And the shelter they can go to is at Florida International University. We've seen a lot of people driving north on US 1 and also on the Florida Turnpike. So people are taking the advice of evacuating the Florida Keys. That is good news. Yeah. And those are the shelters in Miami-Dade. Felix Morales Senior High School, Darvin Fuchs Pavilion, Miami-Dade County Fair Expo. There are pet-friendly shelters. There are shelters with special needs. Go to miamidade.gov to get the latest. And here are the shelters in Broward County. If you need to look at the list again and look at it closely, go to our website, cbsmiami.com.
That we had told you about in Monroe County. That's Roman Costasi, who is the county manager of Monroe. Let's take a listen.
Shelter population in FIU is up to 35 right now for special needs and 70 for general population and growing. So folks are going up there, which is great. I'm going to turn it over now to Key West, and we'll be here for Q&A.
Thank you. I'm Craig Cates, the Mayor of Key West. My message is to continue to evacuate. The storm is very, very strong. Everybody's watching the model very closely, but they move over east, west. We're so close. We're right on the edge, so it's very important to get out here. We have 42 bridges that connects Key West to the rest of the mainland. If one of those bridges go out, it'll be a long time before we get any services back down here, even if we don't get hit hard by the hurricane. So it's very, very important that we evacuate. And I want to thank everyone, all our staff, EOC, all our volunteers, everybody that's keeping Key West up and running and safe. So that being said, I want to turn it over to our city manager for some more details.
Good evening, Jim Scholl, Key West City Manager. The evacuation.
All right, again, officials in Key West updating and urging people who have begun to evacuate and who have been evacuating just to continue that process, mandatory evacuations in the Keys.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Our special extended coverage of Hurricane Irma continues now at 7:30. The storm pummeling more islands in the Caribbean on its way to South Florida. Haiti, just one of the many places dealing with heavy rain and strong winds.
And tonight we want to take a few minutes in our coverage to have a conversation about the main concerns that are leading up to, during, and then after a storm like this.
We want to make sure you have all the information you need, of course, and that's why we have Chief Meteorologist Craig Setzer standing by, joining us as well. And it's not just about weathering the storm, it's also about what happens after the storm.
Right. So a lot of times when we have a hurricane impact here in South Florida, we think about just, oh, you got to get through the storm, get your shutters up. Once the storm's gone, maybe like in the Wilma situation, tarps. This is a much more serious event than that. The possibility of loss of roofs is possible on roofs of older homes. That is another reason why we want to have the house envelope protected. And that's where we put the shutters up to keep the glass from breaking, to keep the wind from getting inside of the house. Most of the newer homes have roof straps, so even if some wind gets in, the roof will stay on. But the older homes that don't have that and weren't retrofitted or upgraded, there's the potential for the wind taking off the roof.
Correct. I got a question from a viewer about roof turbines. What is that?
Yeah. So those little wind things, they're silver. They're about this big. They sit up on the top of the roof and they spin when the wind blows, and they help ventilate the attic and get some of the heat out. Unfortunately, when a hurricane is blowing, they spin super fast and they create different pressures in the attic. And then if they blow off, they allow rain to come in. So they make these covers, and tomorrow is a perfect day to get a ladder, get up on the roof, and put your wind turbine cover on your wind turbine.
Cover up your turbine. All right, we have some questions from some viewers. This is Danielle Wynn Clapper, who asked on Facebook, how long can we expect the worst of the storm? Will it be longer than some storms that we've experienced in the past?
Well, unfortunately, it is a much bigger storm than Andrew. The saving grace to South Florida at the time, and not to Homestead, of course, Country Walk, was the fact that it was a compact hurricane, so it marched through South Dade. But this is a much bigger storm, several times, 3 times bigger. And I just saw a message that the hurricane hunters are finding that the hurricane force winds are expanding outward, something we don't want to see for 2 reasons. One, it's going to up the surge potential, but also it means that we will be longer duration in the storm. It's possible we could be in hurricane force winds for 12 hours from before sunrise to after sunset. But of course, the worst part of the hurricane is the core, and that wouldn't last that long, fortunately. That may last 2 hours, maybe 3. But that's the part that does all of the damage, and that's the part that we really have to be most prepared for.
Wow. Another viewer was asking about the European model. Does it concern you about so much discrepancy in the European model?
Well, the European model has been doing very, very well. We keep statistics on how the model's doing in the East Storm. I got a question earlier today, was that, why don't we just pick the spaghetti that's best? Every spaghetti has its day. You know, it's just like some days a storm will do well with one model, other days a storm does well with another model. The European model is unique in that they use a lot more computing power, unfortunately, than the U.S. model, and they do a lot of calculations to get the atmosphere right before they forecast. And so it is doing better with this storm, and right now, unfortunately, that means that the storm is coming here if you buy that.
We've talked a little bit about this, about people who have been thinking about, you know, on the fence whether I should try to go. At what point is that question or that debate over? If you're still here at this point, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, if you're still here Friday at sunset, you're not going anywhere. Everybody should be close to where they're going to be going sunset on Friday. You do not want to be on the road at all, caught in a traffic jam with a major hurricane coming up.
And a lot of people also have been asking about the turns. When is that spaghetti going to turn? Is it going to turn? Where is it going to go? Obviously, we know you can't predict that completely, but we did see that with Matthew last year when it made the kind of that last-minute turn away from us. We all had that big sigh of relief.
Right. Unfortunately, this one, all of the turns kind of cover some part of South Florida, and because it's a big storm, we'd still feel the impact. The turn also, probably more unfortunately, is it's not going to happen until probably Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. So the storm's just about here, and then it turns almost like it's taking aim at us, and that's going to be pretty terrifying.
And that was the scenario we didn't want. We were hoping for that turn sooner.
Right, we're hoping for the turn sooner
or later.
Or later, yeah.
And it would have missed us on the other side.
Right.
Wow, it really is just a lot to wrap our heads around, and we've been talking so much about trying to sort of take care of everything that you need to do logistically, but also sort of take care of yourself emotionally, because this gets very, very stressful. A lot of people here in our newsroom a little bit stressed out about what's going to happen, and so how do we deal with that?
And to include your children in this too, and kind of keep some family cohesion. I mean, and for me, I've been looking at models, looking at numbers, and we've been talking about this since last Thursday. I just noticed that the reality of what's unfolding is starting to sink in, and so I'm like, ooh, and so I kind of almost had to just pause for a second, because when you're insulated like this, getting ready, doing all these busy things, now the fact that in fact it is coming here is starting to settle in and sink in, and so the people who still have hope that this is going to suddenly dodge us, that's not going to happen. We're going to feel some impact. How bad the impact is still questionable, because we don't know exactly where that core is going to go.
Well, especially for you, you've been living, eating, breathing this storm already for days now, and keeping everyone informed and really giving the community all the information they need to know.
You know what? And as we started last Friday and Saturday and over the weekend, I was thinking and putting out there, no surprises. Nobody should be surprised if there's a hurricane threat here, and nobody afterwards should say, I didn't expect it.
And you talk about children. I have grown children, and they're starting to act like children right now. This is affecting everybody, like you say. Thanks, Craig.
Well, tonight some concerning reports of people deciding to stay in evacuation zones.
They believe that being in a high-rise will protect them from the storm surge, and we're talking with the experts who say that is not the case. That's next.
Welcome back to our extended coverage of Hurricane Irma. We've seen some people who live in high-rises in evacuation zones say they want to stay there because they'll be above the storm surge.
But that is only half true. There are risks that are not being considered.
CBS 4's Silva Harapetian explains.
These are images from after Hurricane Wilma in 2005. That was a Category 3 hurricane. Windows in office towers, condos, and hotels blown out from top to bottom. Since then, dozens of new high-rises have gone up. Many meet some of the strictest building codes in the United States, capable of withstanding winds of up to 175 miles per hour. But they haven't seen a hurricane like Irma, Category 5, and the strongest hurricane to form over the Atlantic.
As you look at a storm, the structure of the winds, they get stronger as you go farther up in the atmosphere. So when you are, let's say, on the 20th floor, the 25th floor, you're going to be feeling winds that are almost a category higher than they would be if you were on a ground floor.
After Hurricane Andrew in 1992, building codes were changed, requiring the first 30 feet of any high-rise building be equipped with high-impact windows to withstand being hit by a 9-pound 2x4 traveling at 50 feet per second. Even so, none have been through a Category 5 hurricane. Also an issue, the 20 or 25 construction cranes that are able to stand winds of up to 140 miles per hour. Irma is still at 185, and there is also storm surge and flooding to consider. Zone A, B, and now C have been ordered to evacuate. The majority of high-rises are in Commissioner Ken Russell's district. He says people have a false sense of security.
People have been having this internal negotiation with themselves of whether or not they should leave, and they find justifications of why they should stay. My building is this year old, or I'm up on this floor, or I have this glass. It's time to end that discussion. So we're past discussing whether or not you have impact windows, whether or not you can see a crane from your window. And now that we're under a mandatory evacuation for those, the details of your building are irrelevant. It's really now about safety. What are you going to do when nobody can access your building, when you don't have power, when you don't have water, and it could be days, it could be weeks. We don't know.
This is part of the evacuation zone. Storm surge is expected to actually come all the way inward here inland, and everyone who stays in these high rises will definitely be affected because we're expected to see some flooding on Biscayne Boulevard and also into some of downtown. So the news here, get out while you still have a little bit of time left. I'm Silva Harapetian on CBS 4 News.
And Craig, back with us now, and you were talking about, you actually devised a plan with your son in case the cell phones go out.
Right, and I said, stay where you are, I will come and get you. Don't leave your location. And I also spoke with my brother, and I said, if you don't hear from me by Wednesday of next week, come, but bring food and fuel, because after 3 days, I'm out of fuel for my generator, and I'm also going to be running low on food. Right. I'll be eating a lot of rice.
Don't come empty-handed, right?
Don't come in, right? Don't come to check on me. Come and bring supplies. And so we should make the assumption, because we've never been through a hurricane with just cell phones, with this type of digital technology. So we should make the assumption that the entire communications network, internet, cell phone will be down, and maybe down for days and days and days. And so we have to inform those who we're have our hurricane plan with what their action should be if they don't hear from us.
And I know there's an app out there that people are using that your phone becomes a walkie-talkie, but you still need cell.
Right, you need Wi-Fi. And so that requires the internet, and so that light can be down too.
That's not going to do it.
So, all right, let's show you what's going on with the storm here. Here is the visible satellite loop through the day today, and you can see Irma there and continuing to grow in size. That's not a good thing. It's not growing much in intensity, but it's way, way up there on the intensity scale. So it's going to come up through here, through the straits, and then turn to the north. The water is very warm here. There's not much to disrupt it, unfortunately. It does not look like it is going to go over Cuba and weaken. We wouldn't want that for Cuba, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And right now, Grand Turk was pounded in the eye wall earlier. You can see the eye as we go towards sunset. The last picture there at 5:14 p.m. You can see the sun going down here in the west and then casting a shadow because the cloud's very tall here, around 10 miles up and even a little bit higher there. So there is the close-up visible loop of Irma. Here is the latest advisory. We're waiting on a 7:47. So before 8, we'll see a position update. We call that an intermediate advisory. Sometimes watches and warnings are changed during that. It gives us the new latitude and longitude, wind speed, the direction of movement, the intensity, and also the pressure, and then the locator too. So that didn't come in yet, but we don't expect much to change. This is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be as we go through the night tonight. And what doesn't change is the forecast track. The forecast track will change or be updated at 11 o'clock. There's the storm size, there's the center, and hurricane hunters indicating that the storm is expanding on that southeast side there. So it's literally growing in terms of its wind field, which has two implications. One, as it comes over South Florida, there, by the way, is the Friday time frame, the Saturday time frame. As this comes over Florida, if it's a bigger hurricane wind field, then that means that there's more storm surge probably coming with it. And there's also going to be a longer duration hurricane wind event where we're in the hurricane force winds. Now, once the core passes, and hopefully it passes just east or well west of us, once the core passes, the winds will gradually come down. But it will blow pretty hard for a while throughout the day Sunday and then even into Monday. But then by Monday, the weather gradually improves. Still breezy, it's still hot. Chances for rain, though, are fairly low in its wake, as it looks like the whatever feeder band, moisture feeder band to the east of it is not really going to be a problem. There we are in the future track affecting the southeast U.S. I wanted to show you the evening computer models. Most of them have come in, not the major ones, but this is the 5 p.m. Saturday time frame. So if the storm gets a little bit further north, then it arrives a little bit sooner. If it takes a more southerly track here, it arrives a little bit later. And you can see that here by this line right here. These models arrive earlier. That is Sunday at 7 a.m. These models a little bit later, and the ones that went further south even later yet. So the time frame Saturday night into Sunday. Of course, we need to prepare and evacuate the storm surge zones. And with more on storm surge, here's meteorologist Liz Horton.
That's right. Storm surge extremely dangerous. So it occurs whenever all that strong wind comes from Irma. It will push all of that water from the ocean straight on shore. So we'll likely see it rise very quickly. In fact, within a matter of 15 or 20 minutes, you could see those levels rise by a couple of feet. And we do measure storm surge in feet. It's important for you to understand that the way it's measured is if you're standing on dry ground and we had what we call 3-foot or 4-foot storm surge, that would be literally 3 or 4 feet up. So that would be waist level to chest level. If you have 6 or 7 feet surge, it's over most people unless you're a super tall basketball player. It's going to be way over your head. That's literally how far the water will rise. And as you can see, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting about 10 feet of storm surge in some places. That is very concerning. We do have hurricane watches posted already from the National Hurricane Center. These will soon change to storm surge warnings, rather, and this will likely happen later tonight into early tomorrow morning. It's important to remember that storm surge comes before the storm. You will likely see these levels start to rise and all of that water moving once we get into Saturday afternoon and evening. As you can see, a high risk now from West Palm Beach all the way down to the Broward, Miami-Dade County line. And then that extreme risk from Miami-Dade all the way down towards the Upper Keys and around towards the Gulf of Mexico. We'll try to zoom on in a little bit closer for you so you can see more of a town-by-town, city-by-city look here. Elevated risk from Deerfield Beach, actually really all the way up from Boca, all the way down towards Dania Beach, Hollandale Beach, Hollywood Beach. And you'll also start to see those colors change a little as you cross from that Broward County line into Miami-Dade County. There you see lots of the yellow. That's going to be a little bit of a higher risk, that moderate risk that you'll begin to see very dangerous storm surge. Even that includes the Miami River. Watch what happens as we push farther south. This is the section that we are very concerned about. From Palmetto Bay over to Cutler Bay, Princeton, Gables by the Sea, Coral Bay. If you live in any of these areas, it is serious time to make sure you get out. We are talking major storm surge problems here with catastrophic damage, and even the Keys dealing with not only moderate but potentially high risk in some spots of that dangerous storm surge. Just to put a frame of reference, most of Key West is sitting at about 3 feet above sea level. If these levels reach 5 to 10 feet, it would overtake the entire island and likely wash out US 1. I do estimate probably many problems with roads, and that's why the evacuations are so important. If you live in A, B, or those portions of C that have been evacuated, it is for a reason. That rising water will come ahead of time, and when you see it, it's likely too late for those emergency responders to get to you or for you to get out. Back to you.
Very much. It's because of those storm surges that Liz was just talking about that evacuation orders were actually expanded today.
Yeah, here's a look at the evacuation zones in Miami-Dade County. It is mandatory for zones A and B and for parts of zone C that you see highlighted.
And in Broward, the rule basically, if you live east of US 1, you have to evacuate. We'll be right back. Welcome back. All of Miami Beach is covered by the mandatory evacuation order.
Look, they're a government cut. Many people have been listening to the warnings, turning a usually bustling area into a virtual ghost town.
Now, CBS 4's Lisa Petrillo has been on Miami Beach for most of the day and gives us an idea of a rather eerie feeling tonight.
It is so hard to believe that this is Ocean Drive, right? The street of movies, TV, tourists, and glamour. Now it looks like a virtual ghost town. Take a look. I mean, these shutters all up and down the street. We saw men, workers here all day. There's sandbags over here. Usually you see tourists lining up, you see cafes. The only tourists we saw had suitcases in their hands because they had to get out. They were scared, they were shocked, they didn't know what was going on. And guess what? This isn't the only popular street that's virtually empty. And believe it or not, this is Lincoln Road. There's the Apple Store, Athleta. Normally, it's so busy you have to walk around the crowds. Today, really all we're seeing is a handful of workers securing these buildings. Back out here on Ocean and 5th at TGI Fridays, and yeah, no fun here tonight. But the good news in all of this being empty and a ghost town is that hopefully people are taking this mandatory evacuation seriously. I'm Lisa Petrillo.
And it's a good thing they are.
Yep.
That is an eerie scene, isn't it? Miami Beach.
Thursday night. CBS 4 News at 7. We'll be right back.
But first, a reminder of the radio stations where you can listen to our broadcasts during the storm. In the event that you lose power, a battery-powered radio will pick up our coverage on these stations.
All right, the 8 o'clock advisory is in, and here it is. The intensity is the same, 175 miles an hour, still moving west-northwest at 16. The pressure is down. Sometimes could be an indication of strengthening, certainly something that we don't want to see.
Turks and Caicos right in the line of fire right there.
Right.
It hasn't made that move yet.
No, that's Saturday night. We're 48 hours away from that.
Okay, well, we'll all be watching with much anticipation.
Absolutely.
And that's our coverage for now. Until you join us again for CBS 4 News at 11.
Yep, we'll see you at 11 o'clock.
Have a good evening.